When America's sweetheart of home renovation found herself in the hot seat facing questions she never saw coming. The cameras were rolling and there was nowhere to hide. Even the most composed celebrities can reach their breaking point under that kind of pressure. This was the explosive interview that had everyone talking the moment. Joanna Gaines did something nobody expected. The studio lights blazed as usual on the Today with Jenna and Friends set. That familiar morning show energy buzzing through the air. Jenna Bush Hager sat across from Joanna, who had come on to promote her latest home design book. What began as a cheerful, feel-good segment was about to take a turn that left viewers and crew members stunned. So Joanna, your new book really focuses on creating spaces that bring families together. Jenna began with her signature warm smile. But I have to ask, there's been some chatter online about whether your design philosophy actually excludes certain types of families. Joanna shifted slightly in her chair. Her media-trained smile flickering for just a moment. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Jenna. Our designs are for everyone who wants to create a beautiful home. Jenna pressed on. Well, I've been reading some of the criticism, she said, pulling out her phone as if reading from notes. Some people are saying that your aesthetic, while beautiful, primarily caters to a very specific demographic. The farmhouse chic, look the shiplap. The neutral colors, it all feels very, let's say, homogeneous. The word hung in the air like a challenge. Joanna's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but her voice stayed steady. I think good design transcends demographics. Jenna, beauty is universal. Jenna leaned forward slightly. But is it though? When you look at your social media, your television shows, even the families featured in your magazine, there's a pretty clear pattern. Don't you think representation matters in the design space? Of course, representation matters, Joanna replied, her tone becoming more clipped. But I can't control who applies to be on our show or who buys our products. We welcome everyone. Jenna nodded, though her expression suggested she wasn't satisfied with that answer. Speaking of welcoming everyone, she continued, there was that controversy a few years back about your family's church and its stance on certain social issues. Some people felt that created a disconnect between your brand's message of bringing people together and the actual values being promoted. That's not something I'm going to discuss today. Joanna said firmly, her smile now completely gone. I'm here to talk about design and my book. But Jenna didn't back down. Don't you think your platform comes with a responsibility? You have millions of followers who look up to you. When you stay silent on important issues, isn't that a choice in itself? Joanna's hands gripped the arms of her chair as she answered carefully. I believe in creating beautiful spaces where families can thrive. That's my focus. That's my expertise. And that's what I'm here to discuss. Okay, Jenna said, shifting gears slightly, but still pushing forward. Let's talk about accessibility then. Your designs often feature expensive materials, custom-built furniture, extensive renovations. How do you reconcile promoting family togetherness through design when most families can't afford what you're selling? We offer budget-friendly options, Joanna said, her voice strained now. There are ways to achieve the look without breaking the bank. Jenna raised an eyebrow. Are there, though? A single throw pillow from your line costs more than some families spend on groceries in a week. It feels like you're selling an aspiration that's fundamentally out of reach for most people. The tension in the studio was palpable. Camera operators exchanged nervous glances, and a producer in the background made subtle hand gestures, though it wasn't clear whether they were telling Jenna to back off or to keep going. Joanna finally replied, her voice rising slightly. I think you're mischaracterizing what we do. We inspire people to see potential in their spaces, regardless of budget. Jenna met her gaze evenly. But inspiration without accessibility can feel pretty hollow, don't you think? The air in the studio grew heavier still, every second stretching longer than the last, as viewers at home watched a seemingly light-hearted interview unravel before their eyes. Jenna shot back sharply. It's like saying everyone can have a beautiful home while selling products most people can't afford. Isn't that a bit hypocritical? The word hypocritical seemed to land like a physical blow. Joanna's composure, which she had managed to maintain throughout the increasingly hostile interview, finally began to crack. Her eyes flashed with something that looked dangerously close to anger. "I don't think that's fair," Joanna said, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "My husband and I have worked incredibly hard to build something meaningful. We've created jobs. We've revitalized an entire town. We've brought families together through our work." But whose families? Jenna interrupted, clearly refusing to back down. "Because when people look at Waco, when they look at your empire, they see a very particular type of family being celebrated and catered to. Where are the single mothers? Where are the multi-generational households? Where are the families that don't fit your picture-perfect aesthetic?" Joanna's hands were visibly trembling now, though it was impossible to tell whether it was from anger or hurt. "You're twisting everything we stand for. We've never excluded anyone. Haven't you though?" Jenna pressed relentlessly. "Maybe not explicitly, but when your entire brand revolves around a specific lifestyle, a specific look, a specific type of family structure, that sends a message. And when you refuse to engage with criticism about that message, what are people supposed to think?" Joanna snapped, her media training finally failing her completely. "They're supposed to think that I'm a designer who helps people create beautiful homes. Not a politician, not a social activist, a designer. But you can't separate those things anymore, can you?" Jenna fired back. "Not when you have the platform you have. Not when you're influencing how millions of people think about what a perfect home should look like." The studio had gone completely silent, except for the hum of the cameras and lights. Even the crew seemed to be holding their breath, watching this collision between two very different ideas of celebrity and responsibility unfold before them. "You know what I think?" Jenna continued, her tone suddenly come almost conversational, which somehow made her words even sharper. "I think you've built this brand on the idea of authenticity and family values. But you've never had to define what those values actually are when they're challenged." Joanna's jaw tightened. "My values are evident in my work," she said through gritted teeth. "Are they though?" Jenna countered. "Because your work seems to be about creating a fantasy version of family life that most people can never actually achieve. And when people point that out, you hide behind this idea that you're just about design, just about making things beautiful. But design isn't neutral, Joanna. The choices you make, who you feature, what stories you tell, what aesthetic you promote, those are political choices. Whether you want to admit it or not." Joanna stood up abruptly, her chair rolling backward with the force of her movement. "I think we're done here." Jenna remained seated, her expression calm despite the chaos she had just unleashed. "Are we? Because I think this is exactly the kind of conversation people need to hear. This is what happens when we stop pretending lifestyle brands exist in some kind of value-neutral vacuum. This is what happens when an interview becomes an ambush," Joanna shot back, reaching for the small microphone clipped to her blazer. "I came here in good faith to talk about design and inspiration, not to be lectured about politics by someone who's never built anything." The insult hung in the air like smoke. Jenna's eyebrows rose slightly, the first visible crack in her composed demeanor. "Never built anything. That's interesting coming from someone whose entire career is built on her husband's construction skills and her father-in-law's local connections." That was clearly a bridge too far. Joanna's face flushed red, and for a moment, it looked as though she might actually raise her voice or say something she'd regret. Instead, she fumbled with her microphone, her hands shaking as she tried to remove it. A production assistant began to approach, but Joanna waved them off. "I can manage," she said coldly, finally freeing herself from the audio equipment. "Unlike some people, I don't need help tearing things down." The cutting remark seemed to ignite something in Jenna, who finally rose from her chair, matching Joanna's intensity for the first time. The air between them crackled with tension as the once polished morning show segment descended into something raw, unfiltered, and unforgettable. "You know what, Joanna?" Jenna said, her tone calm but firm. "Maybe that's exactly what needs to happen sometimes. Maybe some things need to be torn down so we can build something better, something more inclusive, something that actually serves everyone instead of just people who can afford to shop at your boutique." Joanna whipped around, the microphone dangling from her hand like a discarded weapon. "You have no idea what you're talking about," she snapped. "You sit in your studio asking gotcha questions, but what have you actually built? What have you created that brings joy to people's lives?" "I'm asking the questions that need to be asked," Jenna fired back, stepping closer. "I'm holding people accountable for the influence they wield. That's what journalism is supposed to do, even lifestyle journalism." Joanna's voice sharpened like glass. "This isn't journalism. This is a hit job. You invited me here under false pretenses to ambush me with political talking points that have nothing to do with design or my book." Jenna's expression hardened. "Everything has to do with everything. Joanna, that's the point you keep missing. Your design choices, your business practices, who you choose to platform, and who you ignore it, all sends a message about what kind of world you think we should live in." The cameras were still rolling, capturing every second of this unprecedented breakdown in daytime television civility. The producer behind the scenes was frantically gesturing for someone to cut to commercial, but both women were too locked in to notice. "I think we should live in a world where people can create beautiful spaces for their families without being attacked for it," Joanna said, her voice cracking slightly with emotion. "I think we should live in a world where someone can write a book about design without being accused of systematic exclusion. And I think we should live in a world where people with platforms like yours actually use them responsibly," Jenna countered. "Where they don't get to hide behind this fake innocence when people point out the real-world impact of their choices." Joanna's voice rose, her anger finally boiling over. "Fake innocence? You think caring about beautiful spaces and family togetherness is fake innocence? I think refusing to acknowledge who gets left out of your definition of family togetherness," Jenna shot back, "is willful ignorance at best to calculate an exclusion at worst." That was the breaking point. Joanna slammed her microphone down onto the coffee table between them with enough force to make their water glasses jump. The sharp crack of plastic against wood echoed through the studio. "I'm done," she said, her voice deadly quiet now. "I'm done being lectured by someone who has never created anything positive in this world. All you do is tear down, criticize, and divide. That's not journalism. That's destruction." She turned toward the exit, but Jenna wasn't finished. "Running away doesn't change the truth," she called after her. "Your brand excludes people, whether you want to admit it or not." Joanna froze mid-step. When she turned back around, her face was a mask of cold fury. "You want to know the truth?" she said. "The truth is that I've spent my entire career helping people see beauty and potential in their lives. I've employed hundreds of people, supported local businesses, and made beautiful things that bring families joy. What have you done except sit in judgment of people who are actually trying to make a difference?" "I've asked hard questions," Jenna replied, still calm and unflappable. "I've refused to let celebrities use their platforms irresponsibly without being challenged. I've done my job." Joanna laughed bitterly. "Your job is supposed to be entertaining people while they drink their morning coffee, not prosecuting them for thought crimes." Jenna's chin lifted slightly. "My job is whatever I decide it is," she said. "And today, I decided it was holding you accountable." "Well, congratulations," Joanna said, already walking toward the studio doors. "You've successfully turned what should have been a conversation about design and inspiration into a political witch hunt. I hope your ratings were worth it." She paused at the edge of the set, turning back one last time. "You know what the real tragedy is, Jenna? People like you are so focused on finding problems that you've forgotten how to recognize solutions. Some of us are actually trying to make the world more beautiful, but you'd rather tear that down than admit that maybe, just maybe, creating joy is more important than scoring political points." With that, Joanna Gaines walked off the Today with Jenna and Friends show, leaving behind a stunned studio, a satisfied host, and a moment of daytime television history that would be dissected and debated for years to come. So, what do you think? Was Jenna right to push those hard questions, or did she go too far? Should celebrities with lifestyle brands be held accountable for their broader social impact, or should they be allowed to stay in their lane? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the moments that had everyone talking.